when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away, so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were filled, and they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children.
Well, Raymond, that's a well-known story, but I wonder actually if it would help us just to sort of get a little bit in context, because it sort of starts off now when Jesus heard this. Now, what's this? What's been happening here?
Right, well, it's really an essay in contrasts, this, because the passage before is all about the beheading of John the Baptist.
Right.
And it's about a dinner that Herod is holding with his wife, who is actually his brother's wife, and he is conned by this woman to ask for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. So it's a kind of horror scene with a dinner and dancing girls and murder and all this kind of stew. And so you come straight out of this into another place and another complete atmosphere.
And very stark, isn't it? Because you can understand Jesus hearing about the death of one he loved and followed, and I guess that whole thing about Jesus must have been thinking, could this happen to me? And of course, it doesn't surprise us at all that he wants to get away and, I suppose, really to process this horrendous thing.
Yes, I'm sure that's true. But what we also see is what kind of a person Jesus is in comparison, say, to Herod. Here's a person who spontaneously gives life in a situation where everybody else thinks, oh well, this is impossible, we can't do this and we can't do that.
Actually, I quite like the way the disciples are. They're quite sensible, really. At the end of the day, and in some ways you could sort of say the disciples are showing some compassion, that they were out in the desert, and the very sensible thing for them to sort of send people back to where they can find food, find the latest, I don't know, McDonald's or whatever. Right. And I almost get the feeling that Jesus sort of almost teases them, you need not go away, you do something.
You do something.
And I can imagine what they felt. They must have been absolutely sort of shell-shocked, taken aback, really.
And something that very strikes me about this, it's often called the feeding of the 5,000, and it says there were 5,000 men and women and children, so there are 10,000 people
probably
there.
Easily.
So the contrast is even more stark. All this incredible mob of people were in fact fed. And Jesus was the person who catalyzed that. And not only that, he's curing the sick and generally spreading life amongst this group.
It is an amazing contrast, isn't it? Because I always get the feeling of that John the Baptist story that sort of narrows them down on John the Baptist and ends in death. It's as blunt as that.
As blunt as this.
And then you get this lovely story, as you say, of sort of life breaking up. What do you think happened? Do you think? Various people say, oh well, you've got the sort of 5 loaves and 2 fish, and then everyone else sort of shamefully got out their lunch or parcels and shared it around. What do you reckon happened?
Well, I think there are 2 ways to read this. One, what you just said, you can think that they all had lamb sandwiches in their back pockets. And they brought them out and shared them. The other is that it's a story told to show how Jesus gives abundant life in whatever situation he's in. so that however small the resources are, they're multiplied and shared.
Yes, yeah.
Because it, you know.
Yeah, and I love the way we get the message in there of Jesus taking, blessing, giving, breaking, giving. You know, we hear the echoes of the Eucharist. He's going to give his own life. He's going to give his own life to give bread to others.
Right.
Yeah.
And the question that comes to each one of us is, in whatever situation we're in, do we in fact give life to other people?
Yeah, there's a challenge.
You know, that's a huge challenge.
It is.
Mm-hmm.